The message appeared on Dr. Alan Foster's screen at 3:18 a.m. He had been monitoring deep space signals for nearly 15 years at the Arizona Observatory, but nothing had prepared him for this. "This can't be right," he whispered, adjusting his glasses. The pattern repeated with perfect precision, a mathematical sequence that couldn't possibly be random noise. Alan's fingers trembled as he reached for his phone. Within hours, the observatory hummed with activity as colleagues verified his findings. The signal originated from somewhere beyond Neptune, broadcasting continuously and growing stronger. Dr. Melody Warren, the lead astrophysicist, studied the data with narrowed eyes. "These aren't natural radio waves. They're deliberately modulated." She looked up at Alan, her face pale. "Someone is sending this message directly to us." 3 days later, Major Lisa Green arrived from Washington. She moved with the confident precision of someone used to classified operations, her military uniform crisp despite the desert heat. "I understand you've made progress decoding the transmission," she said, dispensing with pleasantries. Alan nodded nervously. "We've isolated repeating segments that correspond to basic mathematical constants. It's like they're establishing the common language." Lisa's expression remained neutral. "And you're certain this is extraterrestrial?" "Absolutely," Melody answered. "The signal originates from a moving source that doesn't match any known spacecraft trajectory. And the power required to transmit this clearly from that distance." She shook her head. "No human technology could manage it." Government officials began arriving daily. The observatory transformed into a makeshift command center, while similar signals appeared at tracking stations worldwide. A week into the event, the first breakthrough came. "We've decoded part of the message," Alan announced to the crowded room. His computer displayed strange symbols alongside their translations. "They call themselves the Meridian Empire, a collection of star systems under unified rule." Lisa immediately contacted her superiors. By nightfall, representatives from every major world power converged in emergency session at the United Nations. 2 days later, astronomer Ben Hawkins noticed something odd while reviewing telescope data. "There's something at the edge of the solar system that wasn't there before," he reported, pointing to strange distortions near Pluto's orbit. The objects moved in formation, gradually accelerating toward Earth. 3 massive shapes, each larger than anything humans had ever constructed. "Those aren't natural objects," Alan said, his voice barely audible. Lisa ordered immediate satellite redirection for better imaging. When the first pictures came through, the room fell silent. The vessels defied conventional design. Asymmetrical structures of dark metal with glowing energy patterns across their surfaces. Nothing in human experience resembled their construction. "Get me the president," Lisa ordered, stepping away from the screen. News broke worldwide despite attempts at containment. Streets filled with a mixture of frightened protesters and curious onlookers. Religious leaders called for prayer while military forces across the globe moved to high alert. In the observatory's main hall, now crowded with analysts and officials, Alan stared at the incoming data. "They'll reach Earth orbit in 6 days at current speed." "What do they want?" someone asked. Lisa studied the vessel's approach vector with a tactician's eye. "They're being deliberate. This isn't an attack formation." "Not yet, anyway," Melody added quietly. The final decoded portion of the message appeared on the main screen. "Greetings, Earth. The Meridian Empire acknowledges your civilization. Prepare for integration." Alan looked up at the night sky through the observatory dome. For thousands of years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it filled him with dread. The stars no longer seemed peaceful. Something was coming. The 3 massive Meridian ships entered Earth orbit without warning or permission. They positioned themselves in a triangular formation above major population centers, casting enormous shadows visible even in daylight. The United Nations Security Council immediately declared a worldwide state of alert. From the largest vessel, a smaller craft descended toward New York City. Military jets escorted it to a specially prepared landing zone in Central Park, surrounded by armed forces from a dozen nations. News helicopters circled overhead as billions watched the live stream. The craft opened, revealing beings that appeared almost human except for their silvery skin and eyes with vertical pupils. Their leader, introducing himself as Ambassador Vraxnel, requested a formal meeting with Earth's leaders. Commander Jack Miller stood rigid as the aliens approached the hastily constructed diplomatic building. As the military liaison to the emergency response team, he'd been chosen for his calm under pressure. Even so, his hand stayed close to his sidearm. "The Meridian Empire extends greetings," Ambassador Vraxnel said through a translation device. His voice carried a metallic undertone that sent shivers through the assembled dignitaries. "We have observed your world for some time and determined it suitable for integration." "Integration?" asked the UN Secretary General. "Please explain what you mean." The ambassador smiled, revealing teeth too perfect to be natural. "The Empire spans 300 star systems. Earth will become the newest member, benefiting from our protection and technological advancement." Commander Miller noticed how the ambassador never blinked. Behind the diplomatic language, something predatory lurked in those vertical pupils. "Earth is an independent world," the Chinese representative stated firmly. "We have not requested membership in any empire." Vraxnel's expression didn't change. "The invitation is a formality. Integration will proceed regardless. We offer peaceful terms out of respect for your potential." For 3 days, negotiations continued while the Meridian ships remained in orbit. Jack reported directly to the Joint Military Command, who prepared contingency plans none of them believed would work against such advanced technology. On the 4th day, Ambassador Vraxnel presented formal terms. Earth would surrender all sovereignty within 30 days. Human governments would remain as administrative units only. Resources deemed valuable to the Empire would be harvested. Resistance would be discouraged. "This isn't negotiation," Jack whispered to Dr. Diane Rogers, the lead diplomatic advisor. "It's an ultimatum." "Why Earth?" Diane asked the ambassador directly. "What makes our planet so important to your empire?" Vraxnel gestured casually. "Your world contains rare minerals essential to our technology. Your species has potential as labor. Your cultural artifacts hold minor interest." He smiled again. "The empire is generous. Most populations maintain acceptable living standards after integration." That evening, world leaders gathered in emergency session. Jack stood guard as heated debates filled the room. "They're lying," the Russian president insisted. "These terms will mean enslavement." "But can we fight them?" asked another leader. "Their technology is centuries beyond ours." Jack watched as fear divided the room. Some argued for immediate surrender to avoid destruction. Others demanded resistance at any cost. When satellite imagery revealed Meridian ships deploying scanning equipment across Earth's surface, panic intensified. The aliens were already cataloging resources. They'd done this before, Jack realized, studying the methodical efficiency of their operations. Publicly, Earth's representatives requested more time for consideration. Privately, intelligence agencies worked frantically to gather information about the visitors. That night, Jack received a classified message ordering him to a secure facility. There, he found military and scientific leaders from nations that were normally enemies, now united by common threat. "Commander Miller," said a general he didn't recognize, "what we're about to show you doesn't officially exist. But it might be Earth's only hope." Jack nodded grimly. The 30-day countdown had begun. The underground bunker hummed with activity as representatives from 12 nations gathered around the circular table. Despite decades of distrust, scientists and military leaders from Russia, China, the United States, and other powers now shared information freely. Fear of the Meridian Empire had accomplished what diplomacy never could. Dr. Susan Powell adjusted her glasses as she presented her findings. "The Meridian ships emit unique energy signatures we've never seen before, but they follow patterns we can study and potentially disrupt. The room grew quiet as Susan displayed scans of the alien vessels. Their technology is advanced, but not magical. Physics still applies. Captain Frank Reynolds, a communications specialist from the U.S. Navy, stepped forward next. We've detected vulnerabilities in their transmission systems. They use quantum communication that's supposedly unbreakable, but there are patterns in the noise. How did you discover this? Asked the Chinese general. Frank smiled slightly. We've been developing similar technology ourselves. Theirs is more advanced, but the principles are the same. On the other side of the world, intelligence officer Maria Collins crawled through the ventilation system of the temporary Meridian Embassy in Geneva. Her breathing equipment muffled any sound as she positioned herself above the ambassador's private quarters. For 6 hours, Maria remained motionless, recording conversations the aliens never intended humans to hear. When Fraxinal mentioned standard extraction protocols, her blood ran cold. Back at the bunker, Maria's recordings played for the assembled group. The Meridians spoke freely among themselves, discussing Earth as merely another acquisition. The local resistance will be typical, one alien officer stated. They always resist initially. The resource extraction should begin immediately after pacification, another replied. This world has exceptional concentrations of element 715. Dr. Powell pointed to a paused frame showing meridian star charts. Look at these markers. Each represents a conquered world. The scientists worked through the night, identifying patterns in the data. By morning, a grim picture emerged. 27 civilizations, Susan announced. All followed the same pattern. The Meridians offered integration, met resistance, and then systematically destroyed military capability before harvesting resources. No world that refused their terms exists independently now. Commander Miller studied the holographic display. What happened to the populations? Maria Collins answered quietly, labor colonies. The recordings mentioned processing centers for suitable specimens. The representatives exchanged glances. Whatever their country's differences, they now faced extinction together. In a corner of the room, a young programmer named Kyle Bennett worked feverishly on his laptop. I've identified a potential access point in their network, he announced suddenly. It's not much, but we might be able to gather more intelligence. Within hours, a specialized team formed around Kyle's discovery. While diplomats continued stalling negotiations above ground, the hidden resistance worked to understand Meridian technology. 3 days later, breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Physicist Dr. Olivia Martinez had been studying debris collected from the Meridian landing craft. Their communication systems rely on quantum entanglement, she explained, but they use a specific frequency to initialize the connections. If we could disrupt that frequency, we could blind them, Frank finished. Cut off their ships from communicating with each other. For the first time since the aliens arrived, hope flickered in the underground bunker. That same evening, Meridian scout ships deployed globally, scanning deep into Earth's crust. They showed particular interest in oceanic trenches and unstable tectonic zones. They're mapping our weaknesses, Susan observed grimly. Places where they could trigger catastrophic events if we resist. Commander Miller addressed the assembled group. We have 19 days before their deadline. Our mission is clear. Develop a defense that works, and do it before they realize what we're planning. The resistance broke into specialized teams. As they departed, Maria shared one final piece of intelligence. The recordings mentioned something called the Sentinel Protocol. Apparently, it's the only time an integration failed. The race against time had begun. Wind howled across the Wyoming mountains, concealing the sounds of construction deep within an abandoned mine complex. 2 weeks had passed since first contact, and Project Sentinel had transformed the old silver mine into Earth's most advanced research facility. Lead engineer Nathan Harris hadn't slept properly in days. His workspace overflowed with disassembled electronics and handwritten equations. Dark circles rimmed his eyes as he adjusted microscopic components on what resembled a satellite dish. The frequency modulator is still overheating, he muttered to Dr. Olivia Martinez, who monitored energy readings on a nearby computer. "We need to solve this before full-scale production." Olivia nodded absently, her attention focused on quantum calculations. "The meridians use a specific resonance pattern. If we can disrupt it even temporarily." Their conversation halted as Commander Miller entered with Susan Powell. The facility now housed over 300 scientists and military personnel from around the world, all working toward the same desperate goal. "Progress report," Jack requested, his voice betraying exhaustion. Nathan gestured to the prototype. "We've successfully jammed meridian signals in laboratory conditions, but scaling up to affect their ships will require more power than we initially calculated." Susan stepped forward, placing a small metallic object on the table. "This might help. We recovered it from their landing craft in Geneva." The object gleamed with an unnatural blue sheen. Nathan picked it up carefully, examining its structure. "What is it?" "Some kind of power cell," Susan explained. "It maintains charge without any apparent input. Our scientists think it converts background radiation into usable energy." Olivia's eyes widened. "If we could reverse engineer this." For the next 3 days, the team worked without breaks, analyzing the alien technology. Nathan finally emerged from his workshop with red-rimmed eyes but a triumphant smile. "We've done it," he announced. "We've adapted their own power source to fuel our jammers." Above them, 16 miles into Earth's atmosphere, the first test satellite deployed from a stealth aircraft. Its dish-like apparatus unfolded, orienting toward the nearest Meridian ship. In the command center, Nathan held his breath as he activated the system. On the main screen, they watched the Meridian vessel's energy signature fluctuate. "It's working," Olivia whispered. "Their shields are destabilizing." The test lasted only 30 seconds before they terminated the signal, not wanting to alert the Meridians. But it was enough. Project Sentinel had proven viable. That evening, as the team celebrated their breakthrough, Maria Collins arrived with troubling news. Meridian scout ships had been detected surveying Earth's oceans and mineral deposits. "They're cataloging everything of value," she reported. "And they've established landing zones at strategic locations worldwide." "They're not waiting for our answer," Jack realized. "They're preparing for resource extraction, regardless of our decision." The deadline for Earth's surrender was now just 9 days away. World leaders maintained diplomatic talks, while secretly authorizing deployment of Sentinel satellites across the globe. In Washington, the president signed authorization for the defense grid, knowing it might trigger immediate conflict. "How many satellites can we deploy before they notice?" she asked her advisors. "Maybe 30, came the response. "Enough to protect major cities, but not the entire planet." Nathan and Olivia worked to improve the system's efficiency, trying to maximize coverage with limited resources. Every Sentinel satellite required precious components that couldn't be manufactured quickly enough. On the 11th day after first contact, disaster struck. A Meridian patrol detected an ascending launch vehicle carrying 3 Sentinel satellites. The alien ship immediately changed course to investigate. "They've spotted the delivery system," the radar operator announced, panic edging his voice. Jack made an instant decision. "Activate the nearest operational Sentinel. We can't let them report back." Nathan's hands trembled as he entered the command. The Sentinel satellite powered up, directing its disruptive beam at the approaching Meridian vessel. On the monitor, they watched the alien ship falter, its systems failing as it drifted off course. "It worked," Olivia breathed. "Yes," Jack replied grimly. "And now they know we can fight back." The atmosphere in the United Nations Security Council chamber crackled with tension. Ambassador Vraxnell stood before Earth's representatives, his silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights. The deadline for Earth's surrender was now just 3 days away. "The Empire has shown considerable patience," Vraxnell stated, his vertical pupils narrowing. "Yet we detect activities suggesting resistance rather than preparation for integration." World leaders exchanged glances. The disabled Meridian scout ship had been successfully hidden, But clearly the aliens suspected something. "We require additional time to reach consensus," the Secretary General replied carefully. "Our planet has many independent nations with different governance systems." Vraxinal's expression hardened. "That is not the Empire's concern. Your deadline remains unchanged." He gestured sharply, and holographic images appeared above the assembly. Gasps filled the room as the images showed Meridian warships entering attack formations in orbit. Their massive weapons systems were now clearly visible, aimed at major cities. "These are merely precautionary measures," the ambassador explained with a cold smile, "to ensure a smooth transition." Commander Jack Miller watched from the side of the chamber, his hand instinctively reaching for the secure communicator in his pocket. Project Sentinel was not yet fully deployed. They needed more time. That night, emergency meetings convened in capitals across the globe. The deployment of Sentinel satellites accelerated despite the risk of detection. 28 units now orbited Earth, with another 15 scheduled for launch within 48 hours. At sunrise, Meridian ships began aggressive maneuvers, dropping to lower altitudes over military installations. Fighter jets scrambled in response but maintained distance, under strict orders to avoid engagement. Dr. Olivia Martinez hadn't left the Wyoming facility in days. She monitored the Meridian fleet's movements, noting patterns in their formations. "They're preparing for something," she told Nathan. "Their energy signatures are changing." Before Nathan could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed a Meridian vessel hovering directly above a research station in Antarctica. "They found one of our backup facilities," Susan Powell said, rushing into the control room. "How did they?" The question died as they watched energy beams slice through the Antarctic research station. The structure collapsed in seconds, burying the scientists and equipment inside. Across the facility, screens lit up with incoming reports. Meridian forces had simultaneously attacked 3 military bases and a space launch center. The attacks were surgical, designed to demonstrate power rather than inflict maximum casualties. Ambassador Vraxinal's message followed immediately. "This limited demonstration illustrates the consequences of continued resistance. Full integration will proceed in 72 hours. Any further defiance will result in escalated response." The president appeared on the emergency broadcast system an hour later. Her face was grim but determined as she addressed the world. "Today, unprovoked attacks by the Meridian Empire killed 117 people across 4 nations. These acts of aggression reveal the true nature of their intentions. Despite their talk of integration, the Meridians offer only subjugation." She paused, her next words carefully measured. "After consultation with world leaders, I must inform you that Earth rejects the Meridian Empire's demands. We will not surrender our planet or our freedom." In orbit, the Meridian flagship's weapons systems powered up. Secondary vessels moved into attack positions above major population centers. Within the Wyoming facility, Commander Miller received confirmation that 34 Sentinel satellites were now operational. Not enough for complete coverage, but their best hope. "They're targeting power grids and military command centers first," Maria Collins reported, monitoring intercepted Meridian communications, full attack commencing in 3 minutes. Jack looked at the assembled team, scientists and soldiers from nations that had been enemies just weeks ago, now united in Earth's defense. "Activate all Sentinel units," he ordered. "Deploy countermeasures." Nathan's fingers flew across the control panel. Sentinels activating now. Above them, in the cold emptiness of space, humanity's last hope powered up to face an empire that had never known defeat. The Meridian flagship initiated its attack sequence, energy weapons charging with a blue-white glow that illuminated the clouds below. Its target was Washington, D.C., selected for maximum psychological impact. Smaller vessels positioned themselves above other capitals, awaiting the flagship's first strike as the signal to begin global bombardment. From the Wyoming Command Center, Commander Jack Miller watched tension build across multiple displays. 34 Sentinel satellites represented humanity's only defense against an armada that had conquered dozens of worlds. Meridian weapons at 90% charge called out a technician. Impact in 47 seconds. Jack exchanged glances with Nathan Harris. Everything depended on their calculations being correct. Activate primary Sentinel grid, Jack ordered, his voice steady despite the stakes. Nathan pressed his palm against the biometric scanner. Sentinel defense system activating. Now. In orbit, the dish-like satellites oriented toward the Meridian vessels. Each one emitted an invisible beam, targeting the specific quantum frequency Olivia had identified as critical to Meridian systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The flagship's weapons discharge faltered mid-sequence. Energy cascaded wildly across its hull as control systems failed. Throughout Earth's orbit, other Meridian ships experienced similar disruptions. Shields fluctuating, weapons systems powering down, communications arrays going silent. It's working, Olivia exclaimed, monitoring the energy readings. Their systems are destabilizing exactly as predicted. On the main screen, they watched the flagship drift off target, its precise positioning thrusters no longer functioning. Secondary vessels appeared equally disoriented, some spinning slowly as their stabilization systems failed. The Wyoming facility erupted in cheers, but Jack remained focused. This is just Phase 1. They'll adapt. Sure enough, within minutes, Meridian engineers began emergency countermeasures. Several smaller vessels managed to restore partial shields, while others retreated to higher orbits beyond the Sentinel's effective range. They're regrouping, Maria Collins noted, but their command structure seems compromised. Jack nodded toward the communications officer. Connect me to Space Command. Minutes later, 12 fighter jets broke atmosphere, each carrying specialized weapons designed from reverse-engineered Meridian technology. Captain Julia Wright led the squadron, her voice calm over the radio despite the unprecedented mission. Approaching target coordinates. Weapons hot. Remember your training. Hit their propulsion systems first. The Earth fighters were smaller and more maneuverable than the massive alien vessels. While the Meridians struggled with failing systems, the human squadron attacked with precision. Missiles struck vulnerable points identified by Project Sentinel's analysis, causing cascading failures throughout the alien ships. 3 Meridian vessels attempted landing operations, deploying ground forces in strategic locations. They met coordinated resistance from units that had trained specifically for this scenario, using tactics developed from Maria's intelligence about Meridian combat protocols. In London, soldiers with special jammers disrupted the aliens' personal shield systems. In Beijing, ground forces used unconventional techniques to overwhelm the invaders' sensors. Across the globe, humanity fought with the desperate creativity of a species defending its home. The Meridian flagship, still partially disabled, attempted to retreat to higher orbit. Captain Wright's squadron pursued relentlessly. They're trying to get beyond Sentinel range, she reported. Permission to engage with maximum force. Granted, came the response from command. Julia led her fighters in a daring attack run directly into the flagship's damaged propulsion system. The resulting explosion illuminated space like a new star, visible even in daylight from Earth's surface. In the Wyoming facility, the team watched in stunned silence as the massive vessel broke apart. Meridian fleet in disarray, reported the tactical officer. They're withdrawing to defensive positions. For the first time in known history, the Meridian Empire had failed in an integration attempt, but the battle was far from over. The remaining alien vessels regrouped at the edge of the moon's orbit. Their communications, partially restored, surged with activity. They're calling for reinforcements, Maria warned, monitoring the transmissions. The main Imperial fleet is being summoned. Jack looked at the exhausted but determined faces around him. Then we need to send them a message they can't ignore. The disabled Meridian communications vessel drifted in low Earth orbit, its engines dead and its crew evacuated. 4 specially trained astronauts approached in pressurized suits, their movements precise despite the zero-gravity environment. Leading them was Dr. Susan Powell, who had insisted on joining the mission despite the risks. "Cutting through the outer hull now," reported an engineer, carefully applying a laser tool to the alien metal. Structural integrity holding steady. Inside the Wyoming Command Center, Nathan and Olivia monitored the operation through helmet cameras. The fate of Earth might depend on what happened in the next few hours. "Be careful with the central chamber," Olivia advised over the comlink. "According to our scans, that's where the primary transmission array is located." The team breached the vessel's command center 30 minutes later. Strange consoles with liquid crystal interfaces lined the walls. Susan moved directly to what appeared to be the main control system. "It's just as we theorize," she said, her voice tense with excitement. "The quantum entanglement nodes are accessible." While Susan's team worked to secure the communications array, Maria Collins reported disturbing news from the monitoring station. "The Imperial reinforcements are accelerating. Long-range sensors detect at least 15 capital ships approaching from the direction of Saturn. Estimated arrival: 18 hours. Commander Miller studied the tactical display with grim determination. Earth's defenses had bloodied the Meridian Advance Force, but a full Imperial battle fleet was another matter entirely. The Sentinel system couldn't cover enough area to neutralize that many ships. "We need to broadcast now," Jack decided, "before they can coordinate with the main fleet." In space, Susan connected Earth-designed interfaces to the alien technology. Kyle Bennett's specialized software began decoding the transmission protocols, searching for access to the wider Meridian network. "I'm in," Kyle announced after several tense minutes. "Their security is advanced but follows logical patterns. We have access to their broadcast system." Jack nodded to the president, who stood ready at a podium. Behind her, screens showed the leaders of other major nations, unified in this critical moment. "Begin transmission," she ordered. The captured Meridian array activated, sending a signal throughout the vast Imperial network. On thousands of worlds across the galaxy, Imperial broadcasts were suddenly interrupted. The message began with footage of burning Meridian ships falling through Earth's atmosphere, followed by images of disabled alien troops being captured by human forces. The president spoke clearly, her words translated by the Imperial system itself. "Attention, Meridian Empire. The world known to you as Earth will not be integrated. Your invasion force has been defeated. Your technology has been compromised. Your tactics are now known to us." The transmission continued with detailed footage of Sentinel satellites disrupting Meridian systems and Earth fighters destroying the supposedly invincible flagship. "We offer these terms. The Meridian Empire will immediately withdraw all forces from Earth space. Earth will be permanently designated as sovereign and protected from Imperial interference. All information about Earth's defenses will remain classified within your records." The president's expression hardened. "Should these terms be rejected, be advised that we now possess the ability to transmit this disruption technology to other worlds within your empire. How many more defeats can your authority survive?" The transmission concluded with close-up footage of the Sentinel system's schematics. Not enough detail to copy it, but enough to prove Earth could share the technology with other subjugated species. For 3 hours after the broadcast, silence reigned. The Imperial reinforcements slowed their approach, holding position near Jupiter's orbit. Finally, a transmission arrived from the Meridian High Command. A stern-faced Imperial official appeared on screen. "Your resistance is unprecedented," the official stated flatly. "The High Command requires assurance that this disruption technology will remain confined to Earth defense only." Jack exchanged glances with the president before she responded. "Agreed, provided our sovereignty is guaranteed." 48 hours later, the Imperial fleet began withdrawing from the solar system. Earth remained vigilant, expanding the Sentinel network to cover all approach vectors. In the Wyoming facility, Susan studied reports coming from across the galaxy. On a dozen worlds previously thought pacified, resistance movements had suddenly emerged, inspired by Earth's defiance.